everyone, welcome to my channel. This is the channel where we dive into topics dealing with love, dating, relationships, and of course, books, anything related to romance. And has there been a lot going on lately? Not just related to romance, but definitely related to just relationships in general. First, if you don't know, my name is Porscha Sterling. I'm a romance author, and one of my favorite things to do is to just speak about, of course, romance as a romance author, but also just relationships between people, whether that's friendships, parental relationships, the relationship with yourself, all of that. And like I said, this has been a crazy week and there is a lot to discuss. But first, before we get to all of that, in my last video, we talked about how men don't always fumble women. Sometimes they punt them based off of many various reasons, and how a fumble is an accidental thing. It's like, oh my God, I didn't even realize what I was doing. A punt is an intentional decision where you recognize the value in a person, you see that they're great, but for whatever reason, you just opt out. Like, that's just not for me. That was an interesting video. If you haven't checked it out, go look at that. But today, I actually want to speak to the women that follow and watch my channel, because sometimes, I'll be honest, ladies, sometimes it's not the men that are fumbling or punting. Sometimes things don't work out with a guy that we know is a great man because we were the ones that were not ready. In some cases, we were the ones doing the fumbling and the punting. Let's dive into that. Like I said, there's a difference between a fumble and a punt. A fumble is when you lose something valuable by accident. A punt is when you make the choice to release it on purpose. This can happen many different ways. Sometimes with the punt, it's not so obvious that a man might be punting you. Like, it might literally just look like him knowing exactly what it is that you want from him and not doing it. It could be exactly that. It's a choice he's making. Maybe y'all are in a situationship and he's like, well, I know that she wants to be in an actual relationship with me, but I'm not going to give her that. And if she decides to stay, cool, because it's on my terms. If she decides to leave, cool, I'm gonna just have to be sad and let her go. But if you actually stepped into your power and decided, look, I don't want this, I'm going to move on. If he let you go, knowing that you're a great woman, then that's a punt. I do think that even if you are in that situation, what you need to recognize is that a person deciding to do that has nothing to do with your value as a woman, because people have a lot of different reasons for just being like, nah, I'm not going to commit to this. It doesn't mean that you're not valuable. You can be valuable. And obviously, I feel like if anybody's dealing with you on any level, there's value that they see in you. But I've seen people do this for the smallest things. I know of a couple who were on the verge of being engaged, but one of the people wanted to take a job in a different area, and that was part of her dream, to take this job in this area. And the guy that she was with didn't want to have a long distance relationship. They were engaged and wanted to marry each other. They loved each other and felt each other was like a valuable person and could be like their life partner, but there was that thing that they couldn't get past and neither one wanted to compromise on it. That was an obvious punt on both of their behalf. So I just wanted to put that in there because I felt like it needed to be said. Now that I've covered that and you know that this happening has nothing to do with your value as a woman, let's talk about how this situation plays out when we do it to men. And it's tough to talk about things where we might have to admit as women that we might be the toxic ones, because the girlies don't want to admit that we don't always do everything right and that we're not always well intentioned. And that's just a hard thing to accept sometimes, that we might be toxic, but it does happen. And I'm going to tell you a few examples of how this might play out if you're in a relationship and you might be unintentionally doing it. So let's get into that. Okay, so just like with the men, fumbling or punting can happen just based off of where you are in your healing journey. Sometimes we jump into things not knowing that we aren't ready. We haven't fully healed from another situation that we've been in. We're still holding on to resentment, or we're not truly open and ready to move forward. And if we happen to find the person or the guy that we always wanted and he's literally right in front of our face, there are things that we can unconsciously do to sabotage it, and that would be a fumble. It's an accidental, I didn't even know that's what I was doing, that led to all this dysfunction. And one of those things is not recognizing a man's consistency because you're used to dysfunction. If you've ever been in a toxic situation with a person where there's like a lot of highs and lows and highs and lows and highs and lows, then you might mistake how this person acted during the highs as normal, because obviously the highs are what made you so happy and wanting to stay in the relationship enough to ignore the lows, right? And in a lot of toxic situations, what's happening during the highs is a lot of love bombing, and they're like hitting you up all the time, all day, and just telling you how great you are and buying you all the things and taking you on all the dates and this and this and this, and all this energy that they're giving to you, because it's just like in bursts. It's a whole bunch at one time, and then you have the low of just absolutely nothing. You get used to that roller coaster. You get with someone who is healthy and stable, and they interact with you in that way. They're not talking to you all day or hitting you up all day or every day. They're not constantly like checking on what you're doing and making you FaceTime so they can see. Like, they're not constantly inviting you to go out or taking you on dates or whatever. And so it's a slower pace, but it's a consistent pace. And you mistake that for the person not being interested. In some cases, you might actually start to voice that in very negative ways. Why are you not da-da-da-da-da? Like, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? And a healthy man or a healthy person in general will recognize patterns of codependence. They'll recognize enmeshment, and they might back away or decide, I don't know if I want this. Or they might continue to try to show interest because they recognize that in a relationship, you do have to figure out the needs of the other person. But at some point, if you continue to do this and you don't address that in yourself, then that could be a fumble. If they decide, nah, I can't deal with this. And in some cases, what I've noticed with women is sometimes we can fumble and we don't really notice it's a fumble because the relationship doesn't end. But what it does is it turns from healthy to toxic. And eventually it just kind of just goes down the line of just getting worse and worse and worse and worse until it finally ends. And this is just in general, it seems like men don't want to be the one to end a thing. So they'll like delay actually ending it. And then you find that they might be cheating or doing some other stuff because they just don't want to end it. I don't know why. Maybe things haven't ended well for them in the past and they just are afraid of that. I don't know. But for whatever reason, I've noticed that women are most likely to be the ones that actually end a relationship. So sometimes you might not know that you fumbled something, because what it would look like is not that it ended because you made a mistake. It'll look like the dynamic shifting. Now this relationship that could have been a good relationship for you starts to look like a toxic thing because you're constantly complaining about certain things that are normal, and how you're viewing it is that this is bad for me, even though it could be good for you if you were a little bit healed in certain areas that you aren't quite aware of. This is not for you to go back and think in the past about things and beat yourself up. This is not for that to happen because we're all human. We all make mistakes. This is just a pattern of growth. The thing is, you want to learn from your mistakes, okay? You don't want to continue to make them. The next thing that you could do that would be categorized as a fumble is if you're constantly comparing him to your ex instead of seeing him. If there's a man that comes into your life, he might be a great guy, have great intentions for you, but in your mind, you're like, oh my God, he does all this stuff like my ex. I think he is just like my ex. And you start treating him in the same way that you did your ex. In turn, this brings out a side of him that might not have come out if you had not done that. I'll give you an example of this. Let me think. All right, this is gonna be like a ridiculous example, but I'm making it ridiculous purposely so you can get the concept of it. Let's say you love to wear like wigs, you love the flowiness, you love all of that, and you have natural hair, but it's just easier for you to wear wigs. You can put them on and like, fantastic, right? But let's say your ex preferred your natural hair. So whenever you had a wig on, he would just treat you funny. And then when you didn't have it on, he made all of these remarks about how beautiful you looked and all of these things. And so you ended up distancing yourself from something that you enjoyed to please him. And then you noticed once the relationship was over that you did that with a whole bunch of things. The whole relationship, you were pleasing him, and you turned into somebody that you didn't even recognize because it wasn't you anymore. You were just trying to appease him. And then you get into another relationship or you meet another man, and this one is he's perfectly healthy. He's not a manipulative person. But let's say he saw you in a wig and he complimented, or maybe he didn't compliment your appearance that day. Or maybe he did. He was like, oh, your outfit's nice, and you had your wig on. But he didn't say anything about the wig. And then let's say he saw you on the next date and you had your natural hair out and he was like, oh, I really like your hair. In your mind, you're like, oh my God, he's doing the same thing my ex did. This is his like small micro way of trying to control me and manipulate me. So now you're on guard. You're being extra vocal about everything, almost to the point of being overly aggressive. Like if you say you like Caesar salad and he's like, I like house salad, you're like, well, what's wrong with the Caesar salad? He's looking like, what is wrong with this person? Like she needs some healing. Like, why is she so combative over everything? I'm just voicing an opinion. And he doesn't even know. In your mind, you just got out of a situation where somebody was like, I think the term is called negging, right? I think it is. But they were negging and constantly criticizing every little thing. And you had to build yourself back up. Now you're just hyper aware of anybody that might possibly be doing that, and he's just receiving that. In that case, if you're not able to recognize it and just have an honest conversation like, look, I'm still dealing with something that I'm healing from, and I don't want to mess this up to where we just end up hating each other or resenting each other, so I need some time. If you don't do that, then you can end up fumbling a good thing and it turning toxic. Another way that I've seen women fumble men is pushing a guy away when he tries to get close. There's a bunch of reasons why this might happen. It might be ego, it might be pride, it might be fear. Some women, if a guy gets close sooner than they're wanting the person to, then they might, out of fear, just back all the way back and shut things down. You have to also know yourself and know your own personal triggers, because if the person is just love bombing and moving way too soon, then that's one thing. If you sense that, you can have a conversation about that. If you're doing it because there's an element of control attached to it, like, oh, he just indicated that he likes me, so I'm going to withdraw and now wait for him to do all this stuff to prove to me that he really does actually like me. Like, he needs to do this and buy me this and take me here and do all of this stuff, and I'm going to use the fact that he likes me as a way of controlling him. Then you could be fumbling a good guy, because a good guy will recognize that. If you take his presence for granted and you just assume he'll always stay, that's definitely a way that women I've seen, and I've been fumble great men. That could be like if you friend zone a guy, and it's because, and a lot of times, like I said, this happens when we're not really ready to meet the man of our dreams. We might friend zone a guy because we're still chasing the toxic pattern that we haven't quite figured out. So we're still chasing the bad boys or whatever you're chasing. And so then you have this guy in the friend zone, and you're almost treating him like a fallback plan. He's the person that helps build you up. And then somebody else comes along and you're like, ooh, okay. At some point, he's just going to be like, I'm done. Like, I'm not going to continue being the person that's just sitting here waiting for you to realize that I'm the guy that, like, has been here, been consistent, and never let you down the entire time while you're chasing these ridiculous people. That would clearly be a fumble. Biggest way I see women fumbling men is poor communication. And it's expecting a man to read your mind. That's the biggest thing I've noticed in my life, is when a woman is not saying what she wants, not speaking her mind, not saying anything. She'll call her friend and tell her everything and not tell the guy that she's in a relationship with or interested in anything. She won't say anything at all, and just expects for him to know what she's thinking, and then judges him based off of what she expects him to know that she's not saying that she's thinking. It's I guess maybe because I operate in a way that I want you to, I don't like anything ambiguous. I like clarity. And I think as a woman, you should always expect clarity from a man. So you should give clarity. You should be clear on what it is that you want, not in a way of laying down the law, but just letting it be known. It shouldn't ever be, if it's so important to you that you would judge somebody based off of whether or not they do it, then you should let them know the rules of the game. These are definite fumbles. And if you've done it in the past, give yourself grace, let it go. Think about it though, learn from it, and be able to check yourself in the future, because fumbles happen when we don't handle somebody with care, and before we know it, we've dropped someone who actually wanted to be there, somebody who actually wanted to be a stable presence in your life and be your ride or die and your everything and loyalty, all of these things that people search the world for and wait their entire life for. You can fumble that person because you're chasing ridiculous things. Like maybe the good person in your life is 5'11" and you're only looking for guys that are 6'3", or maybe the good person in your life is, you want somebody making 9 figures and he only makes 6. If it's a big thing, like definitely if it's something that is super important to you, values, beliefs, even political beliefs these days, all of that kind of stuff, if it's that important, then yeah, that's not a fumble. That would be a punt, which we'll talk about next. But if it's just something like, oh my God, he wore those corduroy pants that one time and that was so ugly and I just can't get over it. Yeah, that would be a fumble. So now let's get into when we may decide to punt someone. And a punt is intentional. This is when you see that he's good, but you let him go anyway. If it's because of a reason that is actually important to you, then that's one thing. But you don't want to do this if it's out of fear or out of immaturity, or maybe because the work it takes to keep him feels heavier than the thrill of chasing somebody who isn't ready and isn't requiring much. Those are the times when you look back, you're like, So I know this part stings. It does. That was that face. That was the it stings face. But we have to own it. And sometimes it wasn't the men that failed us. It's that we weren't healed, or we weren't willing or ready to receive real love. So in these cases, it's not that you're supposed to beat up on yourself, but it's important to take accountability when you're reflecting back on your relationships. It's so important to just be like, yeah, this is where I messed up, and own it, and not always dump it on the other person and just be like, if he didn't, and he was this, and he was horrible, and he was, because like I always say, it takes two people for anything to go bad. If you don't own your part, then you can never correct it. You cannot change what you don't see. So if you don't see the things that you did, then you can't make sure that you don't reenact that the next go round and then turn something healthy into something bad. Because that's a sad thing. That's a sad thing. Life is short and it's not forever. Like, you might not ever get the chance again in some cases. So you just want to make sure that you take the time to detox and heal through every relationship. The first one I want to discuss is the situation where you keep the great guy as an option when you know he deserves more. This is different from a fumble where you have a guy in a friend zone, because a lot of times when that happens, everybody else can see, oh, that's the person she should be with, but you don't see that that's the person you should be with. So that would be a fumble, because it's like, oh, I didn't even know. I have blinders on and this is the one. What is it? My Best Friend's Wedding with Julia Roberts? I think that's the movie. I don't know. But they were friends, had no idea. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh my gosh, he's it. That's different. The punt is when you know he's a good guy, but it might be like one little thing that you don't like, or it might be one little thing that's stopping. Maybe it is the fact that he would require more from you, and because of that, you treat him like an option. And I can give you an example of what I mean about require more. If you're dealing with a healthy man, there's certain things that he would require. For one, he might require consistency and stability from you. If you're still living like the outside party over here life, and you still like to have a Rolodex of men, that's not a Rolodex, but you know, if you still like to have a list of men that you're dealing with, and you like options and variety and all of that, he's not going to agree to that. Sometimes we'll keep that guy as an option and just keep him around, knowing that he's great, but we want to have our fun first. So I'm not ready yet, just wait. And eventually he gets tired of waiting. In other cases, we might punt by praying for a great man, and then once he walks in the room and he's like, I want you, you end up pushing him away because you're just not ready for what you prayed for. So this could be like, if a woman is saying, yeah, I want like a godly, financially stable man who is ready to marry me and wants a family, and we could have our kids, and we could do this and we could do that. And then that guy comes tomorrow and he's like, hey, what you doing? And you're interested, and y'all go on a couple dates, and then let's say because he was ready, like everything was good in his life, he was just looking for the special one. After 6 months, he's like, let's do this, I'm ready. Especially if you're, you know, grown. He might move a little faster. What's the point of waiting? And you just might not be ready. That's a conscious choice. None of these choices or things are bad. It's your choice. But it is a conscious choice, and that is a punt. What I will say is, it's good to be clear on the reason why you're punting. If you're punting because everything's perfect about him, but I just realized I'm in love with somebody else, then you just need to pause and get some closure and healing on that situation before you go and meet another great man and be the toxic person that led somebody on. that would be a reason to sit, pause, reflect, and take accountability for that, and then sit and figure out what you want before you move forward. Another thing we do as women, and I think most women have done this, you test a guy over and over and over, and then it just gets to the point that he gets tired of being tested. He's just like, I'm done. I think every woman has probably tested a guy at least one time, in whatever way you test him. But every woman has probably done that to kind of figure out his intentions or whatever it is. The thing is, if you're doing it over and over, at some point first of all, people know when they're being tested. I definitely know when I'm being tested, because men do this too. Men test us too. But in the beginning, it makes sense. I would be wary of anybody who just on day one is like, wifey, yeah, let me move in, let's get married. Like, you don't know me. Any stable person would at least take their time and really assess somebody. But if you're doing it over and over and over, and it's just obvious, and it's at some point, no, like, that's not it. Another way that I found that women punt men, and this one's gonna sting some, but it's asking for honesty, stability, and effort that you don't even give yourself. This could be someone that's asking for a man who is super dependable and then you're flaky. Or you want him to be financially stable, but you're not stable as emotionally. That's a big one I've seen, is wanting a financially stable man, but emotionally you're not stable. So then when he's working or you don't hear from him or something like that, you're calling him up and stopping by his house. What's going on and who were you with and da 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 da. Any like stable, ambitious guy is going to recognize this is drama that's going to distract from me making money, which is necessary for any woman because we're expensive. So that's going to be a problem. It's not apples to apples sometimes, especially when we're talking about men and women and we're talking about things like stability or effort or honesty, because it shows up differently in how we present that to each other. But, well, honesty, you should be honest, period. But in some cases, you want to be honest to a woman, but gentle. If she's asking, how do I look in this dress? We're soft, we need some gentility. But that's another example of like how men usually prefer to be more direct. So these things show up different ways in how we present them to each other, but you do want to make sure that you're delivering the same things that you're requesting from someone. Last one I see all the time, and I see all the time. That's all I'm gonna say. It's when we choose excitement with a toxic man over peace with a good one. This could show up in a way where a good guy is waiting around for you to get to the point where you're willing to commit to him and be in a committed relationship, and you're like, no, I don't want to do it, because you're still dealing with this toxic person that you just know it's going nowhere with. And I've written about this so many times in my books where sometimes the good, stable person is there and we just cannot leave the toxic thing alone. And that could be how something's getting punted. Hopefully it's not like you're in an actual committed relationship or marriage with a good person and cheating on them with the toxic person, because that happens too, but that's a clear punt. But sometimes it can be just the fact of choosing or being resistant to move forward with a good person because you have this other person in the background, and you might be subconsciously or consciously sabotaging things with a good person because you want to keep that person in your life. So I'm going to give you some practical tips and journal prompts to kind of help you identify these behaviors and move past it. The first tip, you want to recognize healthy love when it shows up. That's the first thing. You want to definitely be aware of, this is healthy. There you go. You can do a journaling session about this. Think about, what do I usually find exciting in a partner? And is that excitement tied to peace or to dysfunction? What really excites me? Is it a good thing for me or a toxic thing for me? You also want to do the inner work so that you don't crave chaos. So for this, you can have a journal prompt where you discuss what unhealed parts of me keep replaying the same patterns of love. This shows up a lot of ways, and it's a very subconscious way that it shows up in how we act through it in relationships. It's important for you to really journal about this and really be honest with yourself. This goes back to that honesty piece. You gotta be honest with yourself to expect honesty. But you have to think about, what unhealed parts of me keep replaying the same patterns in love. Do you feel like deep down that men are all cheaters? And is that your core belief that you're bringing into situations? Or men always try to take advantage of me? Or men always take more than they give? That could be an energy that you're bringing into a situation that can turn it toxic. And let me give you an example of that. That's one that really gets us, that sometimes we don't realize. I've seen this show up with Black women specifically. And I say that because as a Black woman, sometimes we're burdened with the feeling that we always have to prove ourselves in the world or earn our place in the world. So how this shows up in relationships is, you might feel like all of your past relationships were with a man who took advantage of you and who made you earn your place with him and treated you like he was the prize and you were just doing all of this stuff for him. Then you get with a healthy guy, you like him, and you immediately start doing, overgiving. You're just trying to immediately be like, look how great I am. Look, I can do this and I can do that and I can do this and I can cook and I can, and you're running yourself ragged, and he's just like, oh, I didn't ask for this, but this is great. Thank you. Like, yes, I would love this. You set this precedent that you don't even like. You don't even like that, right? You don't like to be stressing yourself out, but however you start something is how you're supposed to end it, because then the person's looking like, wait, you was doing all this in the beginning, were you tricking me? Because now you don't want to cook anything but ramen noodles, but I was getting 6-course meals when you were trying to get me. That's a good one to journal and get through. That's a deep one. You also want to match the energy you're asking for. So with this journal prompt, think about, what qualities am I demanding from a partner that I haven't fully developed in myself yet? If you're demanding that somebody has to be healthy and physically fit, and he has to have discipline because I want him to be 10-packed, like 10 packs and big, huge muscles and well-dressed, and you're saying all of this stuff, but you don't do this for yourself. The last time you exercised was when you had PE as a requirement at school, and you don't eat healthy unless somebody is forcing you to, and you don't dress nice unless you're going to church on Sunday, then like you have to be that with yourself first. Work on those things in yourself, because you want to match the energy. You want to pull in what you're asking for yourself. That's just how that should work. Communicate clearly with, well, everybody, but definitely a man that you're thinking about dating. The journal prompt that you can write about for this is, when was the last time I expected someone to read my mind instead of just saying what I need? And if you're saying, oh, that was this morning, then that's a pattern of yours that you might need to reflect on. But yeah, when was the last time I expected someone to just read my mind instead of me actually communicating what I need or what I think or how I'm feeling? That's a good one. You also want to balance boundaries with openness. So for this journal prompt, think about, are my standards clear and consistent, or do I bend them when I like someone? And that's a big one, because sometimes we have all the boundaries for people we don't like. Nope, can't do this, can't do that, can't do this, nope. And then as soon as somebody that we like comes around, we're like bending like the little things that are on the side of the road dancing like this with the wind, and so if you're doing that, think about that, because you want to be consistent with your boundaries, because you want somebody that is consistent with you overall. You have to be consistent with you. If you actually sit with these questions and you answer them honestly, you'll catch yourself before you fumble or punt the very thing you prayed for. Awareness is everything. Like I said, you cannot fix what you don't see. So it's very good to move slowly in things, track your feelings, track your patterns, and try to learn as you go. And to learn as you go, you do have to have some space where you're sitting down and processing and thinking and reflecting on things. If you're moving too fast, you'll miss it. Honestly, you will. So the next time you meet a man who actually shows up, ask yourself, am I fumbling him on accident or punting him on purpose? Ask yourself that before you actually make a decision to end things or run away or whatever you're doing. Sit and think. Before I just write this person off, what's the reason? Is this based off of some healing that needs to take place, or is this based on what I need to be doing to maintain my sense of sovereignty? Most importantly, think about, am I ready to hold on to what I say I want? Also, think about what it is that you're asking for and what you want, and is this person presenting that? And once it's here, am I ready for it? So comment below. You can tell me the truth. Have you ever fumbled or punted a good man? Be honest. Be honest with yourself at least. Journal about it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with your girls who need to hear it. And remember, I have a book that is on pre-order right now, Fallen Sons of God. You will love it, I promise. So make sure that you go to Amazon and check it out. Until next time, you guys. Bye.